Welcome to week 13 of our journey through the book of Acts in Greek, of all things. Who imagined? Okay, so let's go ahead and begin. We're going to try to do verses 19 through 22 today. We're going to have to do an average of 3.6 verses a day, I think, to get through it this week. Well, let's begin. So, where are we in the context? Well, Peter and John in Acts 3 have healed a lame man. And of course, a lot of people come to faith as a result of this, but there's also opposition. And so the Jewish leaders, and particularly the Sadducees and the priestly leaders, haul Peter and John into jail. And then, what's going on here? And they see a potential disruption here with all kinds of potentially bad consequences as far as they're concerned. So they want to get a control on this thing. And when we get into this section for this week, they have been told to stop preaching in the name of Jesus. And here is their response. And Peter and John answering, now this is an aorist passive participle. Theta epsilon tells me it's aorist passive. My aunt is an active participle, but the theta epsilon trumps my cliche. So you might be tempted to translate it, and Peter and John having answered. And that would be fine, although in this case, answering is the mode in which they said. So we would call this, it's an adverbial participle because it's telling us about the verb. And it's what we might call a modal use of it. The modal use tells us how they said. So it's not after answering, they said. It's and by way of answering, they said. A little fine point there to remind you that participles in Greek are not just temporal. In fact, that's only one use that they can have. So, and Peter and John answering said to them, that is to the Sanhedrin, to this portion of the Sanhedrin probably, quote, direct discourse, capital letter. Not all Greek New Testaments have capital letters, but we're grateful when they do. They weren't in the original. They were all capitals in the original. If right it is, this is the word for righteous, but I think probably right works better here. If right it is before God to hear you, this is an infinitive, present active infinitive, akuo can take its object in the genitive. So this is a genitive plural, and that goes with the fact that akuo can take its object in the genitive. So this is the object. If right it is before God to hear you, rather than God, you decide. Now, you hear this, don't fear them, fear me. Okay, I think I'm going to go with God on this one, although I hope not out of fear, but out of love. But this, as I said in my overview, I think may be an allusion to Plato's Apology. Now, I can't prove it. But I wonder. Verse 20, for we are not able, interesting way of wording it. Basically saying we've got to do what we got to do. And we're going to find out on the next line what it is. We are not able, dunamai, it's deponent, oh my, for procrastinator, for we are not able, we're not able, I don't know about you guys, but we ourselves are not able, what we have seen, relative pronoun, this is the aorist of either horao or blepo, both of which mean to see. For we are not able to, what we have seen and we have heard, not to speak. So basically, we got to speak. We got to talk about this. Not only has God commanded it, but of course, when you've had that momentous of an experience, it's almost impossible not to share it. Present infinitive, aorist, active indicative, aorist, active indicative. Okay, any questions? Put them on YouTube or in the Patreon blog site. Okay, so verse 21. Okay, and procrastinator, and the ones having threatened them, release them. This is a participle. Men are passive participles or middle. Probably, I'm not sure what this word is. It might be a deponent. I've translated it actively, which it's not a real frequent word, by the way. This, in fact, maybe this might be one of the only places in the New Testament where it's used. So the ones having threatened, So sigma alpha tells me it's aorist. This tells me it's middle or passive in form, men, but it could be deponent because that would indicate that I'm going to translate it actively, even though it has a middle or passive form. When it has the, so one, use the ing form, having threatened. Two, if it has the article, use who or which. So it has the article, even though it is separated. The ones who, I'm going to say had threatened, because aorist, had. This is aorist, sigma alpha. This is aorist, sigma alpha. So I'm going to go with had in my smoother translation. The ones who had threatened them released them. Nothing, finding nothing. Finding Nemo, finding nothing. May is not, and then N is a form of one. Not finding no one thing is a word. Finding nothing with regard to the how, they might punish them. This is subjunctive. Subjunctive is coming. Well, actually, there's nothing to clue me in that this is subjunctive coming. But normally you would have an omicron before ont as an ending. This is not a participle, by the way. This is a real ending. I'm a real ending. Lua mai, lua tai, lua metha, luesta, luan tai, ya. So you can see that my cliches help, but they also get you into trouble. So you might have said, oh, 6 out of 7 infinitives and I. Sorry, that's not what's going on here. Or you might have said, my aunt is an active participle. That's not what's going on here. My cliches occasionally get you into trouble. This is the ending on tai, which I've just memorized. There's also an ending on toe with an omicron at the end. Those two are exceptions to my cliches. So normally this would be an omicron. The fact that it's long and lengthened indicates that it's subjunctive. And when there's a sigma with the subjunctive, it's aorist subjunctive. In the indicative, a sigma means future. But in the subjunctive, a sigma means aorist, which means that I'm not telling you how it happened. I'm just saying it happened in order, not finding something to punish them. No particular connotation to the verb there, verb tense. Aorist means unmarked, which means it's just the generic way of saying something. Okay, finding nothing with regard to the how. This is I would call it an accusative of reference with respect to. We just have to throw in some words there. They might punish them because of the people. Because all, causal clause, because all were glorifying God, imperfect, present tense, present stem with an augment, on the basis of the having been done, having come to pass thing. This is ginomai. It's, see at the front, the letters reduplicated, so it's perfect. So it implies that it happened and it stayed happened. I mean, he's still walking. I mean, he didn't go lame again. It happened, it's completed, it's done, and the results have continued because of what had come to pass. And of course, if you want to go a little allegorical in your preaching, this is true when the Lord heals us too, right? We don't have to go back into not being healed. We don't have to go back into being lame again. The Lord wants us to stay healed because of what has come and remains having come to pass. Okay, final verse for today. Now, I find this a little hard. I think I've made sense of the grammar. I welcome other proposals, but here's my attempt. For, okay, I'm okay with that one. He was, I'm okay with that. Now, more, he was of more, perhaps, this is genitive. He was of more than. Now, genitive can be a genitive of comparison, and that's how I'm taking it, that there's somewhere in here, there is a genitive of comparison. The word than jumps out of the genitive ending. For he was of more than years 40, of more than 40 years. He was of more than 40 years. Now, normally after was, you would have a nominative. And so, so the man is the subject here. The man was of more than 40 years. I don't know. That's the best I've come up with as far as the grammar. I mean, I get the sense. Everybody gets the sense here. Is figuring out why this is genitive. Okay, so the man was of more than 40 years, upon whom, relative pronoun, has come to be the sign, this sign, demonstrative pronoun, of healing. Okay, well, that's the verse for today. We'll see you, Lord willing, tomorrow.